Following Labor's victory at the polls on Saturday, Anthony Albanese's promise to introduce an increase in wage prices will, according to some commentators, send interest rates soaring out of control, which could devastate the finances of millions of Australians, as well as the impact on house prices, returning Australians to the bad old days of high interest rates. Well, join us today to discuss how the market is reacting to Labor's victory and what it means for Australians looking to purchase a house is the Informer's home loans expert and managing director of Olive Tree Finance, Daniela Greening. Good morning, Daniela.
Good morning, Michael. How are you?
Good, thanks. Now, what does it mean for interest rates and the housing market and home buyers? And will Albo be able to restore confidence back into the housing market?
It's a good question. Well, there's a lot of questions there to sort of unpack, Michael, at this point. I think following the weekend, there's a lot of optimism in the market. His policy around the home ownership scheme may inflate the pricing in the market a fraction, but I think based on the current labour shortages, stagflation, the rates I think are going to be, they'll go up fractionally, but I just think the Feds need to hold at the moment. Otherwise, we're going to see, as you said previously, we might see things in the 5 and 6%. So it might actually cause a lot of upheaval. So it'll be interesting if Albo, I think he will be able to consistently keep the market, sort of his policies and the dynamic of what he wants to do will keep the market strong, but whether the rates are going up or not, I think it would, so as you know, so much depend on the Fed, on the RBA.
Now, we've still got supply side problems with the housing. What part will that play into it?
Well, I think we're going to continue to see supply side issues. It's not just the actual shortages in the market. People can't build at the moment. Getting product to build a brand new house in the market is still really, really difficult. The prices are going through the roof, just timber, just basics are going through the roof. So supply is going to always be an issue at the moment. And his policy around potentially allowing people to sell their first home and drop some money into superannuation may push a little bit of stock on the market, but I don't necessarily see it's going to be the right pricing point for first home buyers. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Now, one of the things with the supply side problems, all of these initiatives and programs pushing more people into the market when we already can't cater for them, is the great Australian dream, the home ownership, is that because the alternative is just terrible? The renters build to rent not enough, the social housing, all of those things that play into it, where it's either I own my own home or I live in, you know, a less optimistic reality.
It's an interesting cause and effect situation. I think there is a lot of people in the generations under you and I that still require or regard home ownership as the optimum or the bastion of, I suppose, life in general. But I think there's also a group of people in the market that don't see that as the be all and end all. So I think there is a slight turn and belief system in the market that not everybody wants to own a house, but I still, as you said, I think there's still a lot of people who want to own a house. So it's still going to be a lot of pressure on supply and people wanting to buy. I don't know how we affect it, apart from, as I said, increasing the supply and building new houses, which is still an issue. It's going to be an unending amount of problems to try to supply and demand issue.
Yeah, and it seems like it's almost a daily occurrence now, reporting around home companies, building companies going to the wall. That surely can't be helping.
Well, when you've got the likes of one of the biggest home building companies in Australia, like Metricon, who are just struggling to keep prices level to be able to supply the market, it's huge. It's a big issue, and the pressure on all the other builders as well, because obviously Metricon is such a big company. If they're already starting to struggle, what about those second and third tier builders? It's interesting. It'll be really interesting to see what happens. And not only is it just supply issue on building material, but it's also labour market shortage. They just cannot get enough people to build and work in the market at the moment either. So that's going to drive up prices as well.
Yeah, I imagine the rebuilding in the floods would have drained a lot of the builders out of the market as well. So Daniela, buyer or seller market at the moment?
Definitely seller market, but even so, I think the seller market is still a bit weary, because once you sell, you've obviously got to then buy back into the same market again. But if you're looking to sell and you've got no urgency to buy, it's still a really good time to sell at the moment.
And how do we address the shortage of rental properties in regional areas?
Well, that's a $1 million question for everybody, I think. Albo's policy around social housing and to increase supply in social housing will affect some change in that area. But regional housing is a massive issue. And unless there is as you and I have discussed many a time, a big boom in building in regional area, it's not going to be addressed. It's just one of those things, unfortunately. It's just the supply way outstrips the ability for them to be able to, the demand way outstrips the supply in the market at the moment.
Yeah, we've recently seen house prices in regional areas have a really big boost with the tree change that we saw during the pandemic. Is that going to keep going, do you think?
Absolutely. I think the way that the employment market's changed around flexible arrangements for work, that's going to continue to increase. People are looking for a better lifestyle choice, a better work-life balance. There's less impact on having less requirement on people to be in the office 5 days a week. And I think employers are acknowledging that. From their perspective too, it's reducing their cost loadings and their overheads. So if that's a good outcome for both business and for employee, we're going to continue to see that drive for people to move and work in that sort of regional area because it's flexible.
What about apartment prices, Danielle? There was an oversupply there for a long time, especially in Melbourne.
Yep.
Will they stop building those? Will that help apartment prices, or will they drop?
I think apartment prices are just going to stay level. I don't think there's any more or less demand for them. Although the other thing that was driving those buildings, those high density building, was the people moving in from overseas, so student housing and people coming over to study. We don't have that influx at the moment. Obviously, getting a visa to come in and study and do that sort of stuff is getting a little bit harder at the moment still. So I think it's stagnant at the moment. I don't think prices are going up. I don't think prices are going down. There may be more building in the market moving forward when those sort of things become available.
Right. So you mentioned it was a seller's market at the moment. If you're looking to get in, what should you be looking for before you make that move?
To buy or to sell, you're talking about?
To buy.
To buy. Well, I think you really need to just keep an eye on what your budget is and really not obviously go outside that, and make sure that you're not buying in an area that you can't afford. But also from a buyer's market, just be really wary. Buy what you can afford. Make sure that you've got your loans in your pre-approval ready to go, and that your savings history is really important too at the moment. Banks are really, really homing down on living expenses and savings history. So that's really, really important at the moment.
Great. All right, Daniela Greening from Olive Tree Finance. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Michael. Speak to you soon.